All right, so now let's talk about one life-threatening condition we find ourselves lately. I'm talking about stroke, and at first we used to attribute it to people who grow, but now it looks like it doesn't have let me say, age range. It can happen to anybody at any given time. So, again, I'm going to say welcome to you, welcome viewers, Still Healthy Morning Live on Hstv, and this is the Stay Alive segment. Today we're talking about stroke. I'm not doing this alone. I have with me here Elvis Asari, an expert in all these things. So let's break down the conversation. Let's talk about stroke, the causes of stroke, the types, and how we can curb this situation. To remind you, we're going to activate our phone lines for you to call in. Let's have a conversation and ensure that we have answers to all of these conditions. So Elvis, good morning. How are you doing? I know you're laughing. So I find myself to be a doctor, finding myself, in the health space. It's an interesting one.
I know, right?
Yeah, I hope everything is cool.
I'm good. I'm
and
good.
How's your weekend been too?
I'm good.
Yeah, we're grateful to God.
Up and down like an ambulance, though.
Yeah, but let's just hit the nail straight to the whole thing. We're talking about stroke. Just explain to us when we talk about stroke what it is.
Oh, today you're the doctor.
The doctor?
You should tell me what is stroke.
No, you should tell me. I think my viewers about it.
All right. So when we talk about stroke, stroke is basically a burst or a blockage in the artery. So when I say a blockage or a burst, sometimes there are situations where a stroke patient has a blockage or a burst in the artery, which cuts the blood supply to the brain.
The brain, okay.
And when there's no oxygen or blood supply to the brain, that's where you get a stroke.
Okay.
And stroke is something that has to be taken seriously, and most people don't attend to it very early. And sorry to say, stroke doesn't really have a proper warning signs. It was only maybe, I mean, if you are very close attentive to your body, then maybe you'll be able to go like, okay, maybe something is not right, and you just rush into the hospital that this is what is happening, and maybe they'll ask you to do a CT scan, do some x-rays and a whole lot of things. But the CT scan is to actually see the x-ray of your brain, to see the functions around your brain, to see if you're able to get enough blood supply and oxygen to the brain.
Yes. Okay, so you spoke about the blockage in there. How do we discover, or what causes that blockage?
So that's where the types of stroke
comes in.
Okay, so like, for example, the ischemic stroke, basically it's a blockage into the artery or to the vessel. So sometimes people's movement become very slow. Half of the body becomes
numb.
Exactly, numb. There you go, numb. They are not able to move. They start to slur with their words. Sometimes you see them drooling. Sometimes you see the way I'm talking. They are not able to pronounce certain words. They're not supposed. They can't pronounce words properly. Sometimes you see their eye drooping. Sometimes movement becomes so slow to the fact you see them. The most common thing, the movement, they end up dragging their feet. Yes, they are not able to raise their leg and come to a different position, but they drag, and then they have. And with a stroke patient too, they have, instead of walking straight. The part that is affected, they rotate it to walk forward. Instead of going straight, they rotate. So if a normal person should be walking straight, a stroke patient is going to rotate. So this is the good leg, this is the bad leg. So the good leg will go forward, but instead of it going forward, it's going to rotate half and then land. So that becomes a problem. So that's where the rehabilitation comes in. That we have to rehabilitate the patient to. So basically, what I'm trying to say, you have to teach the person, like a baby, how to walk, how to speak, and a whole lot. The other one is the mini stroke.
The mini stroke, okay.
Yes, so the mini stroke is basically you are diagnosed with stroke, but you're able to walk, you're able to move, but they're very little signs of stroke. Maybe your arm becomes a bit stiff, but you're able to move it. Maybe you are able to move your leg, but you are dragging your feet, but there's still some sort of response. So that's the mini stroke. Then the last one is basically the hemorrhagic stroke.
Okay.
So that happens when there's a leakage in the artery, when there's so the blood supply. So I did say when there's a burst or a blockage, that's the hemorrhagic stroke. Yeah. So when there's a leakage to the blood supply to the brain, that's where so sometimes when that happens, you hear saying that there's maybe an internal bleeding. So I remember way back when I was starting, I did have one patient that was he said he went to church. After the church service, he was walking home, he just collapsed.
Oh,
that was it. He just, as he was walking home, he just collapsed.
Fell off.
That's why I said with stroke, there's no warning.
There's no warning to it.
Yes, there's no.
But you saying there's no warning to it. Let's talk about numbness. Sometimes you know you sit in a particular position, then probably you feel your legs numb or your hand and all these things. Is this something normal?
But sometimes we sleep, then we end up applying so much pressure
on the other side. Yeah.
Exactly. But here's the case that the numbness becomes such a continuous thing. For example, you can be sitting. For example, if you remember back in school, those wooden chairs and everything, your bum is gonna get numb, your leg is gonna get numb, and it's not just one part. It's not just one, but it's generally. But imagine being numb on one side. Believe it or not, sleeping pattern is very important, and the nature of our jobs. Believe it or not, when we say what are the causes of stroke, believe it or not, the jobs we do can also lead us to having stroke. Because, for example, I've met so many people with having stroke, and when you start to look at their life pattern, not having consistent sleep, and understand this as you age, because from 18 to 25, okay, that is the glory age, because you can eat all the junk food, you can eat all the hot stuff, you can eat what you will, but as soon as you leave that age of 25 to 26, so let's say from 26 to 30 plus, that's where you need to start looking after yourself, because as you age, your healing mechanism is not the same as it used to be. And when you look at their life pattern, the number one thing is the lack of sleep, the lack of rest. Sometimes the family tree has inheritance of stroke. So sometimes when you ask, okay, maybe I might say, oh, Mr. James, or in your family, is there any, like your grandfather, your grandmother, or maybe from your father's side, your mom's side, is there any history of stroke? And a lot of people do have that information, some do not at all. But later you find out that there's been a generations of stroke, which can be inherited. So all I'm trying to say is that if you do have a family tree that has been inherited with stroke, you should be very careful, is because so that the lifestyle you live, so that it doesn't activate, because the food, the drinks, whatever you do is going to be very, very important. Very, very important, because like I said, when a person, like for me, for example, I have patients with stroke, and the pressure sometimes I get, it also depends on the patient. You can't blame patients with stroke, because eventually there's going to be depression, negative impact, they are they instead of doing the treatment that needs to be done, we always hear a lot of people, I went to do herbal. Don't get me wrong, herbal is good, but the quantity, because to me, you go to, they're like, oh, the more you take it, the faster you heal, which is very wrong. I'm not saying herbal is bad, it's good, but the people's mentality is that the more I drink it, the faster I heal, which is wrong. And a lot of people end up going to do herbal. They go do the herbal, it doesn't work, then that's when they come
back again.
And which sometimes makes the job even more difficult. More difficult. Very, very difficult. Because I have some patients, maybe like for me, for example, I will always ask you that, maybe as I'm treating, I'm like, hi, do you see any difference? Were you able to do this? Because if you tell me you do not see that, I'm like, okay, before I met you, you were rotating your leg. But now, since you are using the eczema frame and you are walking, so for example, maybe a patient might be walking with an eczema frame, and
is it one day?
Yeah, that's for walker. I ask you to walk. Maybe the first time as I ask you to walk, maybe as you are walking, you end up hitting the four walker all the time. As we've been practicing, you reduce the hitting of the four walker. That is an improvement. You get me? So that's what most people fail to see, because they want fast
healing and all that.
And again, it depends also if it's not been approached early, if you've had stroke for some years, if you understand this, and a lot of people need to understand that stroke is a continuous treatment.
It's a continuous treatment.
And I always tell people that with stroke, you will not be 100% mobile, but close to 95% mobility. The reason why I say that is because when I started, I did have a stroke patient that was on a wheelchair, drooping with saliva, not able to talk and all that. I tell you, and this is the truth, that it took us almost a year.
Wow. And what's the condition currently?
He's driving, walking. Wow. He limps though. But all I'm trying to say is that since he has gotten to a certain stage, we are still doing it. He's doing, how should I say, it's just like maintenance. Now we have been doing it once a week because he will go to work, he will drive, he will be in traffic, he'll come back, he'll do this, he'll do that. Eventually, he'll tell you that, oh, I'm having this joint pain, but he's still pushing himself as to do it, to doing his daily activities. You understand? And this is somebody that was from a wheelchair,
now driving.
So it is a big plus for me. Because I do remember when the first time I came, yes, I was new. When I started, I was new. Not a lot of people knew me and a whole lot. So I would say this specific case was like my breakthrough, because that's how the word got spread. Exactly, yeah. Because from a wheelchair to now driving, even though he was stubborn, I told him not to drive, but he will still try to drive because the person is eager to do
things.
Exactly, and especially when you're an independent person. But a lot of people should understand that with stroke, it all depends on the situation, because if it's not being approached early, it's also a problem.
Today.
If you are going to do a short period of a treatment and then you stop, now I have to come back again, it's most likely I have to start from square one. And because I said 1 year, 1 year, it doesn't mean it applies to everybody. Some might be more than 1 year. Maybe some can be less than 1 year, depending on how they feel.
Critical, the whole thing is.
And right now, stroke can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
Because
I was about hitting on that, talking about the age range, because we see young people now with stroke.
Yeah, but I remember when I was in Canada working, the youngest person I treated was with a mini stroke, who was 18. So I do remember, because I graduated, I had to do my we here in Ghana we call it national service. I had to do my 1,000 hours, and during my 1,000 hours, I got this case with the folder and everything, and then they said it says this person has been diagnosed with a mini stroke. And I see the age. I thought maybe it was a mistake.
Something, yeah.
I was like 18. I'm like, wow. How? To me, that I was just a bit confused because I'm like 18. How can you have it? So I'm like, okay, maybe somebody did a mistake. Maybe they were supposed to write maybe. I was saying maybe 86, something 78, something maybe you know because 1 and 8. So I was like, maybe they wanted to write 78. I go there. Literally, the person is 18. So long story short, this person was playing tennis and just collapsed.
And that's it.
That's it.
At the age of 18.
18.
So our viewers should know that when we're talking about stroke, it doesn't have an age limit. It can happen to everybody, regardless of where you find yourself. So now I'm very particular about, we've spoken about the types of stroke. Yeah, and we trying to detect it early, not to let the whole thing explode. And you see, sometimes, now we see people, when we talk about the healing process, we see people with, I don't know.
Ball?
Yeah, trying to day to day. Is it necessary, if you don't have stroke, you have to be using all these things to ensure that the blood runs through the veins?
So, yeah, so those things are basically for, it's very important with a stroke patient, it's very important for blood circulation. Two, your BP is very important.
Okay.
Because if your BP is high, that means it cannot be done. I've had a lot of patients, sometimes I get amazed because I do not understand that you have a stroke, you know you have a condition, okay, and your BP will be over 180. I mean, you ask yourself, why do you want to die or what? Because you know you have the stroke. And sometimes it's amazing you don't have any BP medication, nothing, because you don't have to wait for me to tell you that, hey, you need to get this BP medication or go to your doctor to prescribe you this BP medication or this and that, because you don't have to wait for me. There are certain things that has to be, you know, okay, I'm having this condition, what are the things I need to do before? Because if your BP is high, there's no point of doing the physio, because you're only going to increase the blood circulation, which your BP will be high. So without the ball thing that you were, the whole purpose is that, for example, when you so when we give you the ball, so it's more of a stress ball, and the reason why we give the ball is so that the hand does not squeeze. There are situations where a stroke patients, their hand end up being squeezed like this, and when you try to open it up, it gets stuck. And once it gets stuck, this part, you see how this is really fat? It becomes very, very flat because of the long positioning so imagine being positioned like this for 6 months or 1 year. And as I try to, you will start screaming.
The pains and all that.
So this is something that a lot of people so like I said, with my experience, a lot of people wait to the worst case scenario, and that's when they start that I want a miracle treatment done, which you try to explain to them that this has not been approached early because of this and that. So for example, like the one with the almost 1 year treatment, this was approached early. This was approached early, and of course they were gonna see they had their doctor's appointment, and then they know that they have physio to do at home. So it is a whole cycle they were doing, and which there was much improvement in his physical activities. So imagine being locked up like this for 6 months, and I try to open your fingers. It's
not going to work.
It's not going to work.
All right, so our viewers are still having a conversation with Elvis Asare right here. We're talking about stroke. Now, let's activate the phone lines for you to call in if you have any questions in line with the conversation we're having. this is the right time to do it. So the numbers are down on our screens: 0302 776 379, 0302 776 379. Calling, let's have answers to all these questions we've been asking ourselves about stroke. Now we've spoken about the types of stroke and you know, the effects is having on people and also the generation. Now it has no age limit. It can happen to anybody at a given time. Now Elvis, let's talk about the therapy section. You know, I know there's some process you're supposed to go through day to day. Just run us through with we've spoken about the types.
Yes.
And we've seen we have 3 types of stroke.
Yes.
And with the therapy you're supposed to go through,
yes,
is it the same thing or there are differences?
So like I say, it all depends on how bad the situation is. And yes, you have to go through a rehabilitation exercise. If the arm is not functionable, which sometimes if you go on YouTube, I'll just put an example, YouTube or TikTok, this social media, if you've noticed that with stroke, when you target the arm, so we have this so it's a different tool, but let me just describe it so that everybody it's similar to a machine gun.
Okay.
I say a massage gun.
Massage gun, yeah.
It's similar to a massage gun, but it's not a massage gun. So obviously the whole purpose of this is to increase blood circulation to the arm. So that has to be done almost for 10 to 20 minutes. And if you notice that when that is done, the patient is able to move their hand or do certain movements easy, versus when you don't do that, they find it very difficult. For example, I have a patient, after you ask her to raise her hand up, when you ask her to do multiple, you see the hand dropping and dropping down. So that is something that has to be done on a regular basis. 2 is that we give you prescribed exercises for you to do. These exercises are given to you for a reason. Thirdly is that, like I said, the rehabilitation exercise. So that means rehabilitation exercise can involve a lot. Maybe you even have to walk through the what's it called, it's on tip of my tongue. I've even forgotten the name. It's a okay, good, parallel bar.
Okay.
So the parallel bar, that is supposed, so the parallel bar can be adjusted. It can be high, it can be low. The whole purpose is to narrow the patient. So it's a bar, but it is to narrow the patient to its limit. So imagine, like, you know, when you're on the highway is so big, but there are some places the streets are very tiny, so it's a single cars can only pass. So same thing, that with the parallel bar becomes narrow. So that patient has to hold the bar and then try to walk through it and turn around. So that's what most stroke patients have to do, and it's a constant
thing you need to
practice.
We have a first call on the line. Hello, Eric. Good morning. And where are you calling us from?
Hello, my name is Philip. I'm calling from Australia.
Okay. So what question do you have for today?
Please, I wanted to ask you, rheumatism can lead to stroke.
If what?
What has rheumatism is my leg, and most like the family is difficult to work. When I wake up in the morning, see that one of my hands will be near of the nervous thing. So I'm asking whether the rheumatism leads to so that I know what to do.
Oh, okay.
And so you said rheumatism. And when he wakes
up in the morning, talking about the numbness he feels. Yeah.
So like I said, so when it comes to numbness, it doesn't. So let me put it this way: it can lead to a stroke if it is not being taken care of. But since he said he had rheumatism, the numbness is, I understand that anything that involves with numbness, that means there's lack of blood circulation around that part. And when there's lack of blood circulation, there is always going to be difficult in movement. And even if you try to force yourself to move, if you've noticed that a lot of people with numbness, when you try to when they force themselves to move, it becomes easier. And then when they become stationary, the numbness comes back again. So that's poor blood circulation going on. So someone like him, is a stroke. It can lead to a stroke. It can lead to a stroke if it's not taking care of it properly. So and it's something that is unpleasant to deal with.
Okay, so we're far behind time. We'll be wrapping up very soon. Let's go on the line to pick up another caller. Hello, good morning. Your name and where you're calling from? Hello. Good morning. What question do you have for us today? You do what? Okay. Oh, okay. She can do. Okay. All right, sure. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, kindly, can you speak up? I think from what I heard from her, thank you so much for calling. She said her mom has had, like, she's had stroke.
Stroke, yeah.
Yes, and I think she's healed, but talking
of the arm not being functional.
Yeah.
So here's another thing. There are so many things to the arm not being functionable. Most of the time with a stroke patient, there's this common thing they always say, they feel the arm is dislocated. Sometimes it can be this, sometimes. Or there's a space in between the joint and the socket.
Okay.
Okay. Third of all is that stroke is something that the whole family need to participate. Or the caretaker, or maybe the lady who called, maybe she's the only one doing so many tasks. If that arm is not being proactive or assist, when I say proactive or assistant active, so somebody that will be assisting to do partial activities with the arm, that arm is just going to be useless. Because eventually, if she said she has gone here, gone there, which we don't know the details of the story. If they haven't give them a prescribed exercise, okay, madam, when you get home, make sure you do this with your mother every day, which we don't know. But it's most likely that maybe they might not have even given her, they've not, because most of the time I see they'll go to they'll treat her like, okay, we are done.
You just move.
Just move. So there's a lot involved to it.
Okay.
And like I said, if it's not approached early, sometimes that window of opportunity closes. So that arm sometimes can be useless. But if there's some function going on, then there's hope.
Yeah. I think we're definitely going to have a part 2 of this conversation. And if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Okay, so my booking number is 020-584-1318. 020-584-1318. 1318. And then social media, Instagram and TikTok, which you can see all the videos of the work. It's all physio and CrossFit.
CrossFit. All right. Thank you so much for having you today.
No worries.
All right. So this is where we wrap it up on the show. But before we go, a quick happy birthday going out to you, Frida Fianco. Today's your birthday. From your sisters, your friends, your family, and loved ones, we're all wishing you a happy birthday. That's Frida Fianco right there on our screens. This season promises to be a great one. So my name is James Yafukwesi. This is where we wrap it all up on the Monday edition of Healthy Morning. Join us same time again tomorrow. Have a blessed morning.
Good morning to you. It's so nice to see you. It's fun.